You know, there's nothing better than, getting introduced and starting talking about previous speakers and how they're phenomenal, and then being like, and we got Rob. Appreciate that. But guys, it's awesome to be with you guys today. This is kind of like one of my passions. He mentioned I'm a pastor of a church here in Madison called Doxa Church. We just started about a year ago, and it's been a fun ride. I've had the privilege and just the opportunity throughout my life to just have a lot of different leadership roles, from the athletic field to, just like kind of organizational leadership, and now even like just church leadership. But honestly, like with a lot of leadership experience, I mean, some of you guys have way more experience in leading than I do. A lot of failure comes with that, and honestly, failure, I've learned, is just a really helpful thing. It could be a good thing. It could either make you fall down or make you fall forward. And learning from failure and all of that is something that I'm passionate about. And one of the ways that I seek to live my life is just to live with open hands. And so I'm not ashamed of like talking about my past and just like failures, and just if that can help somebody, like if I can pay the dumb tax for somebody and say like, okay, here's what I've learned and maybe this will help you. That's what I'm all about.
Do you want a microphone?
Do I need one? Do you guys want me to have one?
You guys want a microphone?
I can talk louder.
Use the mic.
Okay.
You want a hand,
I'll do
or
it.
you want this guy?
It doesn't matter to me.
This might be the easiest, but
Cool. All right. Is this better? Yeah. Cool. I talk with my hands a lot, so I might even like that. Okay. Anyway, but I just love like helping men and leaders just kind of take their next step and growing in influence and just growing. And so I'll begin with this, okay? If you guys are leaders, if you've kind of nerd out with like leadership books and management books, you've certainly heard of Peter Senge. Peter Senge is kind of like a management leadership guru, but he wrote a book and he talks a lot about like working on your life in organization as opposed to like working in your life in organization. All right, that really many men, many leaders, we spend a significant amount of time working in our lives, and we're working really hard in doing the things that we're doing. But when we do that, we really fail to work on our lives. And there's a massive difference, and his writing has shaped a lot of the way that I think about growing as a man and a leader. But what I want to do today is just to simply, help you work on your life as a man and as a leader today. And so I'm going to start with this, is really just going to give you two guiding principles, okay? And this is how you can remember it. If you just remember the ox in the axe, okay? And really what this is like, these are two principles that are guided by like ancient proverbs. And I'll start off, do I just right click this? Nope. Space bar. There it is. All right. So these two proverbs kind of guide these principles. So first, the ox, and here's the proverb. All right, where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops comes by the strength of the ox. And guys, here's what we need to know about being men and honestly being leaders, is that you're going to be shoveling crap for the rest of your life. All right, that's what this proverb is really pointing to, because the truth is I think some of us, we'd be tempted to think that I just need like my own business. I need a bigger paycheck. I need like a different job. I need more social networking opportunities and more relationships like that to alleviate some of the crap in our life and to kind of clean out the proverbial barn that is our lives. But the reality is if you know this, if you've lived through this, is like when you get those things, really you quickly find out that that's just more oxen to shovel behind. Right? There's just more stuff. And what I'm getting at is this, guys, I really think that we cannot be men that think one day, like all the work in our lives is finally going to be done. Right? And we can't be these men that think is like someday I'm going to have everything in order and the barn that is my life, right, is finally going to be clean. All right? Because that's really not the way it is, that we all have an ox and an ox craps. All right, this is a great metaphor. I love it. It's super helpful, okay? Now, the problem is this, okay, is that many men, we want a clean barn, right? We like a clean barn, but the only way to have a clean barn is to really kill your ox. So, like, if we carry on this metaphor, so what you would have to do is you go and you shoot your job, you shoot your boss, you shoot your employees, and you'll finally have a clean barn. But with that, you also won't have any production. Right? You won't have any fruit in your life, really. You won't have anything to show for your life. And the goal in life, guys, and you know this, is not to have a clean barn. It's to have a harvest. It's to have production, it's to have a fruitful life, it's to leave a legacy, that it's not about trying to find a life kind of devoid of any type of shoveling, because guys, life is all about shoveling. We need to know this, and to be a great leader and to be a strong man, we really just need to learn how to shovel well and work hard on our lives, okay? Now, the second metaphor is this, okay? It's the axe. All right, so the ox and the axe, and here's the proverb. If the iron is blunt and one does not sharpen the edge, he must use more strength, but with wisdom helps one to succeed. Now, guys, a lot of men, a lot of leaders are working really, really hard, but they're working with a dull axe. Meaning this is that we work hard, but we're not working smart. That we're working hard in our lives, but not on our life. We're using the wrong type of technology. We're using the wrong type of tools, the wrong type of strategy, and it just wears men out. And if this continues on, what I've seen in my life, what I've seen in other men's lives and leaders' lives, is when we continue this on throughout our lives, it wears us out to the point where the temptation is to eventually just kind of throw in the towel, raise the white flag, and just kind of step away. And we disengage, and we become one of the disengaged men in our world today that really add very little to the world as a whole. All right, that some of us, we try and work hard, but maybe you just kind of feel like, man, I am working so hard, but I just can't quite do it. Right, that your life and your leadership, it feels like you're trying to cut down a tree with a butter knife. All right, this is what this proverb is talking about. That some of us, we work so hard at being a strong man, a good leader, but we're not working smart. We have a dull axe. So with these two principles, guys, my hope is, with the few minutes that I have, is really just simply this, is to maybe just get you thinking, right? You got these chips for free coffee, you're encouraged to go grab coffee. Like my hope is that this would maybe just be a conversation starter for you to get you thinking about your life, and to really just help you to continue to shovel well and to chop wood with a sharp axe, all right? Now, the way that I'm going to do this is, and I'm going to consider this idea of being men with maps. And guys, here's why I'm passionate about this, is I am a result of some really strong, good men pouring into me, guiding me, shaping me, challenging me. But what I see in our world, and I see this in my church, I see this everywhere, is that so many men are what I would call like men without maps. All right, that we really don't know where we are, we don't really know where we're going, and even if we know where we want to go, we really don't know how to get there. All right, and you know, for me, like, I really hate asking for directions, and I think most men do, right? I'm not the only one, right? Okay, you're right. And the reason that we hate asking for directions is because in that moment, it kind of exposes that we don't know everything, right? And so we need help. And we, as men, we would rather, a lot of times, like, act like we have it all together and kind of just maintain this illusion that we got this, rather than just kind of asking for help, asking for direction. But if you've ever taken a trip, you know that the trip is way more enjoyable when you actually know where you're going, right? The same is true with life. The same is true when we talk about manhood and leadership, is guys, we need to know where we're going. We need a map, all right? And the way that I've experienced this personally, and I've seen this like played out in so many men around me, is like this, is that when it comes to like manhood and leadership, is many of us as men, we're just really unprepared to face the journey of manhood and leadership. All right? In part because we just haven't like learned the right things. We haven't had people show us the way. And when we talk about this idea of being men with maps, guys, this honestly goes back to when we're kids. All right? Now, I'm not going to get all Freudian on us and all that stuff, but I will say this. You know, some of us were given really good maps by our dads. You know, some of you had really great dads, and they gave you a really good map to manhood and leadership. Some of your dads were really good, and they gave you like a good map, but they never showed you how to read it and apply it. Others of you, you have really crappy maps that were given to you by really crappy dads. Others of us, we grew up without dads, and so we didn't have a map to manhood given to us by our father, and so we had to kind of make up our own map. And really, this is kind of my story. You know, growing up, my dad was both present but very distant. He had mental illness. I'll talk about that in a minute, but he gave me a map to manhood, but it was honestly, and I'm a pastor, you're not supposed to swear, it was a really crappy map. Really crappy map. All right, and in fact, I wrote it down. Like, this is what map I was given to manhood. Success plus sex plus stuff equals being a man. I mean, this is literally what I learned from my dad. All right? And we all have a map, but this was my map for the majority of my life. And guys, I'll be honest with you, you look at that, and that's like kind of like, that map was fun. There was some times where it was really, really fun, right? I was conquering, I was winning, I was getting like, it was a fun thing. But guys, I didn't know is that this was like a really destructive map. And it brought me to a place, it led me to a place that I never intended to go. Never even wanted to go. And guys, while we all have different stories, one of the things that we all have in common is that we all have a map. Every single one of us do. You have a map that you're living by and that is guiding you. The question that we have to ask is what kind of map is it? Is it a map to manhood? Is it a map to like somewhere else? And so what I'm going to do, guys, is I just want to give you a map to consider today, all right? And this is just it. Honestly, this is my posture. Like, I don't claim to be like anything great. When they ask me to speak at this, I'm like, are you sure? Okay, I'm not phenomenal, okay? So, but like, this is just me, like, honestly, like living with open hands and saying like, just take this and consider it. This is what guys have done for me, and I want to do that for you. But I've experienced this in my life that has changed me. I've seen this in other men and leaders like around the country, and I believe that this map will take us to where we were created to be. All right, so you see this. All right, it's basically got three components: identity, community, and purpose. And I'll explain this. As a whole, I really believe that when we look at humanity, when we look at just people, there's essentially, every single one of us essentially has like three dimensions to our life, okay? Like three great aspects of every single one of our lives. And if our maps that we have like don't address these aspects of our lives, and if they don't answer three critical questions, it hinders us in moving forward as men, and it hinders us in moving forward as leaders, and we ultimately won't be the people and the men that we were created to be. And so I just want to spend the rest of my time looking at these three aspects. And the first one is this idea of identity. All right, and the critical question that we have to ask with this map, right, this first aspect of this map to manhood is why do I exist? I mean, this isn't meant to take you into like an existential spiral, right? And just like, whatever, but why do you exist? And as you think about that, and how would you answer that? Like, if we just kind of went around and I passed around the microphone, like, what would you say? And as you guys are like thinking about that question, I'll say this, okay? The question of identity, I really believe is massive. Like, it can't be overstated. It's huge, because this is where men and leaders are forged, and this is where they're sustained. All right, now you guys, I mentioned that I'm a pastor, right? So that means that like I carry with me like a Christian worldview that's informed by the Bible, okay? And the answer to that question, I would say is given by God, okay? Now I know that every single one of us, we don't like share that belief, and really that's okay. Like, we can still learn from each other, and like we can still be friends, we can still have civil conversations, and it'll be great. But let's just do this, okay? Even if we remove that perspective of identity being found in God, here's what I find really interesting, okay? I actually like to read. I have like two hobbies in life. I read and I work out, okay? And when I read a bunch of stuff, even the stuff that I'm like, this is not a good book, but I just want to see what people are writing and saying and stuff. And so I've read a decent amount on like, just like different civilizations, the way that people interact, like social psychology type books. And what I find so interesting is that, guys, even in secular society, all right, you take God out of the equation, even in like places like recovery groups, like Josh was talking about his friend, like you talk about like a recovery group, you read like articles and books on like self-help or like self-improvement material and all this stuff. And guys, thousands and thousands of pages have been written about finding our identity in something bigger than ourselves. That's just the truth. I mean, we might not agree with it, but like literally people are writing this, and it's just like it's a thought. Like throughout human history, guys, if you study every civilization throughout human history, like there's a greater thing that most everybody has thought about and has thinking like frameworks on of like identity and like how we're shaped by the things of this world. And guys, I would say to you guys that identity is largely shaped by where we land in this idea. All right, but here's the truth, okay? When you don't know who you are, you don't know what to do. And conversely, guys, when you know who you are, you know what to do. It's massive. And guys, this is my story. And so I'll explain this a little bit by giving you just a picture of my life. Josh asked me just to kind of share a snapshot of my life. But you know, even though I'm a pastor, like I didn't grow up in the church and didn't even really know Christians. Like I knew 2 Christians, and they were both like really weird. I mean, like space cadets, okay? I didn't want to, I was like, I got to stay far away from that, okay? But I grew up in a family that were educators. And so morals and values and discipline and hard work, that type of stuff was like really instilled. Like we prided ourselves on like being like those types of people. And I remember everything changing for me my senior year in high school, going into my senior football season. I remember the night my dad killed himself. And that kind of like, I mean, being a young kid, like just rocked me. Like I didn't know how to deal with that, you know? And the night that I remember my dad shooting himself, as I look back, that started this intense pursuit of figuring out who I was. And I started wrestling with identity. And so with me, like, I just threw myself into athletics, right? And I excelled, right? And I went on to play in college. I was coached by some of the greatest coaches in the nation. Urban Meyer was my coach. And like I was able to excel, right? And that gave me like a sense of worth, right? That my identity was kind of like placed in this idea of like being the best. Now, alongside that, I didn't know how to deal with all of the shame. Some of you guys have experienced like terrible stuff, right? And the easiest thing to do is to not confront it, but to try and numb it, right? I didn't know what to do with the shame and the guilt and the pain that I felt from not having my dad. And so I just tried to numb it with literally everything I could get my hands on, everything I could snort, smoke, drink, sleep with. That was my story. Going to college on a football scholarship, you guys know the stereotypical lifestyle of an athlete. Like that lifestyle just kind of it was like throwing gas on a already burning fire. And so this was my lifestyle, and it was a destructive one. It kind of fit into this map that I was already given, though. Like success, well, clearly I was going to make millions of dollars in the NFL, right? Sex, doing all right in that department. And then stuff, well, I was a poor college student, but I was on my way to get whatever I want as soon as I just get my first paycheck. And I remember like this was going, there was still like this profound sadness in my life because there was something missing, right? But I remember like kind of just on cruise control throughout college, and it was my sophomore year in college towards the end, and a guy named Andy that I used to party with, he just kind of had like just this radical switch in his life as a man. And I hadn't seen him out at parties and bars, and usually he was the guy that I got all my drugs from, and so I was like kind of bummed out and mad. So we were getting taped up before football practice. And I remember asking him like, hey, what's the deal, man? Like, did you get a girl? You on lockdown? Like, you get in trouble? Like, what is going on? And he just kind of looked at me, and he was just like, he literally said these words. He's like, I found out who I am. And I was just like, what are you talking about? And he started talking about how he had come to God through faith in Jesus. And he looked at me and he was just like, I'm following Jesus now, and I can't be that type of man anymore. And throughout the next couple years, guys, we would travel to football games on plane rides, bus rides, stay in hotels together. And in those moments, like, he would just talk to me and just like tell me what he was learning. And it was like it was a cool thing. And like in those moments, like, I don't know if you've ever felt like when you just hear like a repeated message about something, you're kind of like, man, this is kind of, I know that I need to take this step, but at the same time, you don't want to do it. That was me. Like I had this view, this map of like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to be. And so I'm going to keep him at an arm's distance away. And I did that. Came down, long story short, came down to my senior year in college, did the NFL Combine, the Pro Day type thing. I've had 13 surgeries on my knees. And so I remember sitting down with an agent and my coach and them telling me like, hey, you're not going to get drafted. You're a liability at this point. You're going to have to prove yourself. You'll make it, but you're just going to have to spend the next couple years like proving yourself. You guys remember that movie, Napoleon Dynamite? You guys watch that, some of you? I didn't want to be Uncle Rico, okay? And so that was like one of my big fears in life. And so like I decided that I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And guys, in that moment is when the bottom dropped out of my life. Like, Rob Warren equaled football. It was my identity. Football fell apart. Rob Warren equaled nothing. And I literally had nothing to live for. Drinking got increased, the drug use increased, and harder drugs. Couldn't afford them anymore, and so I had to start selling drugs to support my habit. And I remember the moment, like, and I'll even say this, guys, this is not just like a football Rob story. Like, this is all of our lives. Like, if our identity is wrapped up in your business might fail. Is that going to tank you, right, as a man? Or is there something else like undergirding your life? And so I remember like this happening, and the turning point for me was my mom and my little sister were up in her sleeping in their condo. And I was downstairs on my mom's kitchen table snorting lines of cocaine by myself. And she had a mirror in the back of her kitchen table, and I remember coming up from a line and looking at myself. And I just had that thought. Maybe you've had this thought of like, what have I done? Like, who is this? Like, I hate the person in the mirror. Because that map had brought me to that point, you know? And it was that moment, like, kind of like, where I just decided, like, okay, I got to change my life. So I stopped sleeping around. I had a couple bad experiences with some drugs, and I eventually just cut cold turkey. I stopped drinking and like I just couldn't handle it at that time. I love a good beer now, so amen, right? But I couldn't do that. And I remember at that point, it was literally just to be a better man, a good man, right? And so I replaced like all those other things for like now it's like about being a good man. But as I started trying to do this, I just kept failing. And I was like, I can't be a good man. And so I was back to this identity question. And in the midst of this, guys, Andy was still there, and he must have told me about Jesus like 200 times throughout. And not in like a weird, like, you know, he wasn't wearing like the fire shirts and say turn or burn and smacking me in the head with, you know, and like, it was like literally like he ate Chick-fil-A and was like, oh my gosh, like this is the best Chick-fil-A you got to have. Like he like would talk about God like that. And it never sank in, but I remember, long story short, one night I got thrown in jail, disorderly conduct, drunk in public, whatever. And I remember getting out and feeling like, I think this is the moment you're supposed to go to church. Like when your life is like I remember walking, I was like, this is it. Like, I need to go to church. And I wish I could say like I had this like great experience. I was so hungover that I think I passed out. But I remember going back to my house that day, and I still felt like incredibly heavy. Went to go to bed that night, had like an anxiety attack, ran over to Andy's house, who lived a couple blocks away, pounded on his door. I'm like, he's a Christian, he's gonna make me feel better. I opened the door and then shut it, and basically was like, you know what you need to do. And I was pissed, okay? But I walked home, and I remember as I walked home, I laid in bed and I grabbed the Bible that he had given me a year ago, and everything just made sense. And I was like, okay, like I see it. Jesus, if like you'll forgive me and give me meaning and purpose and identity in life, like I'm in. And that night, surrounded by drug paraphernalia and beer cans, I Googled how to become a Christian. And that's a true story. I don't know if my church knows that exactly, but it's true. But in that moment, guys, here's what I learned. Guys, I don't exist just for myself. Right? My identity is in not just who I can strive to be. It's not in my output. It's not in my production. It's not in my success. But for me, I learned that my identity is rooted in the fact that I'm a child of God. And so this idea of identity, guys, answering this question for you guys, why do I exist? It's just something, now, you might come to a completely different conclusion. It's a question that you just need to ask yourself. And this is, I believe, where we need to start if we hope to move forward in life. Okay, so the second aspect to this map is this, community. And here's the key question, the critical question that we need to ask is, who do I exist with? I mean, this is a big one. Because here's the thing, we need each other. And I don't know if you know this or not, but you and I, we are not manlier when we're alone. We're not manlier when we're trying to forge our way through life alone. Like some of us, we have this big entrepreneurial spirit where we like to kind of be the trailblazers and start new things. And there's this false narrative out there that men are the most manly, that are just out there kind of the Lone Ranger getting it done, and they're by themselves. I would propose to you that that's just a lie, and it's not even true. Because I really believe that you're manlier when you have a band of brothers around you helping you. All right? And you know, most men, I feel like we miss out on this because we want to hide. We want to hide from each other because we don't want everybody to see like who we really are, and like, I got some issues, I got some brokenness, I got some unanswered questions, I don't know where I'm going, and it keeps a lot of men from connecting and engaging, and when we do that, after a period of time, like, we stop trying to grow, and we stop trying to move forward, and many men have settled for a life of just devoid of community, which really just leads to stunted personal growth. And that's really a big reason why it's so hard for a lot of guys to change and to grow. It's because we try and do it on our own. But the reality is we need each other. And that's why, guys, I don't know if you know this, but that's why this group, this room, is so significant. You might not even know this. You might have heard there's Chick-fil-A and you thought the Army guy was speaking this week and that's why you came, right? But like, it's more than that. It's like, this is part of the map to push us forward. Having other men in our lives to help us with this. Because when we have other men like this, guys, it's basically like, it's like when I walk into my house, like my kids have kicked a hole in a wall, but they did that 2 years ago and I don't even see it anymore. But then you walk into my house and you're like, what's up with that hole? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's still there, right? Is you don't see stuff. When other men are in our lives, like they can point out things that are going on that are a little bit dysfunctional and like, that's not quite right. And so this idea of like community and the question of like who am I existing with, guys, it's massive. And so community really just means that we can't hide from each other, but we need men around us. But we need to be really careful of who we lock arms with, right? Like if you read like social psychology articles and stuff like that, I mean, you've heard that you're a conglomeration of the 5 closest people to you. So basically you survey your life and the 5 people that you would consider like your best friends, like that's who you are. That's what social psychologists will tell us. And so we just need to be careful on who we let into that. But you know, in my leadership context, guys, I'm so grateful for the community that I have. Like I wouldn't be the man or the leader that I am without the community of men that I have around me, some of which are in this room. I mean, when I think about me and helping me in terms of like leadership, I mean, like literally an hour ago, we just closed on a building for our church, right? A $2 million deal that I honestly, this was one of the biggest leadership moments of my life. I realized like how much I needed help. And there's a man in this room that basically has taken me by the back of the neck and like mentored me and made this happen and taught me things along the way. I need men like that in terms of helping me grow as a leader. Like even when I think about like my marriage, like, I mean, I need men in my life. I have men in my life that watch the way that I treat my wife, right? They watch us on a date when we're out and they're like, you looked like you were pissed. Like, why were you ignoring her? Like, why were you texting while you were sitting there with your wife? Like that type of stuff. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like they're helping me be a better man and a better husband. Like my kids, they're like, you're yelling at your kids a lot. Like why? Like these men, I need this community of men around me to help us because we all need that. Not just a mass of men, but the right men. So surround yourself who you want to be with. Now the last thing is this, and then we're going to end, is it goes to purpose, right? So we have identity, we have community, and then finally purpose. All right, and again, here's the third question. Why am I existing? Like, what am I existing for, rather? Guys, this map is not just about us. It's not like a self-centered map. All right, it's a map that moves us somewhere. And here's what I believe to be true. Like, this might sound cheesy, but I believe it's true. Guys, every single one of us, we've been made to be heroes. We've been made to sacrifice for others, for unrelenting pursuit of like goodness and truth and justice and love. Like this is who we are meant to be as men. That's why there's so much brokenness and so many issues in our world, because men are not those things. But there's something deep within every single one of us as a man that takes us back to when we were little boys, right? Just dreaming about like just epic battles of like fighting for something good. That's why when we see these movies of like a guy rescuing his girl, like every single one of us is like, yes, right? Like we want that. This map, guys, helps move us there. You're made to lead. Every single one of you. You're meant to lead crowds, not blend into the crowd. And this is the truth. And the question of what am I existing for? Because if the answer is building an empire or making a bunch of money, it's really just going to end in just unfulfillment. That I really believe that as men, we exist to make a difference and to leave a legacy. And so this is the map that I just wanted to give you, all right, just to consider and to think about. And I'm convinced that this map will be helpful for every single one of us, but let me just end with this, okay? I just have to be honest. This is a helpful map, all right? But it's incomplete. And here's what I mean, that if you were just to take this map at face value and start to wrestle with, like, why do I exist? Like identity questions, like, who do I exist with? And you start to add good men around you, and you start to think about this idea of purpose, and you start to like give back. Like you're gonna find more fulfillment and more happiness and joy. Like no doubt you will, for sure. But you're gonna be missing what I would think is the most important component. Because the Bible talks about men a lot. And at one point, the Bible says that man is the image of the glory of God. All right, and here's what that means. It points us to two realities. It means that there's a God, and we're not him. No matter how powerful we are, no matter how much money we have, no matter how much of an empire you've built in this city, we're not him. And then number two, since God made us as men, guys, we're kind of just like restless and incomplete until we find our way back to him. And this is ultimately my story. Like Josh asked me to share this, like, and I just want to give it to you just to, maybe this would be helpful to somebody, you know? So if you don't want to take like the God stuff and just take that map, it's going to be good. But I would say that the most complete thing, guys, is finding our way back to God. And the only way to do that is through Jesus. And if that's like one of those places, guys, that this is the safest place in Madison to wrestle with these questions. With these groups of men around your tables, grab those coffee chips. Like last time I was here, like a bunch of you didn't do it. I'm going to go around this week and just take them all so I can have them. Right? And I'll pursue every single one of you and buy you a coffee, right? But until I came to faith in Jesus, all of my striving, all of my wrestling, all of my proving, all of that stuff was just crushing. And then I realized it's not about my production and my identity. It's not in how much I can do and how much money I have and all that stuff. But it's found in God. And ultimately, guys, I would just leave you with this. If you really want to grab hold of this map, like we need to first let God grab a hold of us through faith in Jesus. And this is, I want you to hear this, guys, please. This is literally me just living with open hands, right? This is not me as like an angry preacher smacking you over the head and making you feel bad and doing all this stuff. This is me just like as a man in this city that loves to help other men find the way. This is what I wanted to give you today, okay? So that's all I got. Josh, I don't know what the proper way, do I bow? Like, okay, thanks guys.